Hello chess friends and welcome to the Art of Chess channel and welcome to a very special game that I prepared for you today. Today we'll analyze the beautiful game played by the two top arch enemies of this year. I would say it like this. Today we'll see the world champion Magnus Carlsen against Hans Niemann. So this was quite a spectacular game. The game was played in 2022 in the Charity Cup and it was a fast time format. It was a rapid time format in which I think both of them played really in a sharp tactical way. And although this is a fast time format game, I still love this game, and I think it's a very important game that shows the beauty about the open Ruy Lopez. You can really use this game as your home preparation because there are many beautiful strategic ideas. There are also beautiful tactical ideas in this game, so in my opinion really a game worth to study. So as I said, although it's fast time format, but in my opinion remarkable game, especially by the world champion Magnus Carlsen, because here almost he played like the Stockfish 15 engine. He played the game without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders. His average centi-pound loss was only 11. Really immortal game by Magnus Carlsen. So let's check out now the game. Magnus opened with the move e4. Hans Niemann's response was e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez is on the board, the Spanish game. a6, the Murphy defense, bishop to a4, knight to f6, and after kingside castling, black is choosing basically now what kind of a game this will become, because you can play of course the closed Ruy Lopez with the move bishop to e7, or you can play the open Ruy Lopez by taking out the pawn on e4. And okay, the game is really wild already, so it becomes an open battle. Hans Niemann also loves the open battle. We know that he's trying many times to spice up the game with some really wild tactics, so he's choosing now his style of play, the opening game. So after move knight to e4, we have d4, trying to open the center. If you take of course with e takes d4 ideas, then you get this problem. Rook to e1, knight takes d4, f3 could happen, so you could have problems on the e file. So that's why here after move d4, first you play b5, and after bishop to b3, you play now the move d5, locking now the center and giving up back the pawn. So black gained the pawn in the beginning, now black gives up the pawn in the center of the board, but at least black has a decent compensation. Now in the center of the board we have the knight centralized, the bishop will come on c5, bishop to e6, we can of course protect the pawn on d5, kingside castling are now normal moves. So you simply rely, I think, in the beginning of the game of your beautiful outposted knight on e4. So in the continuation we have bishop to e6 by Hans Niemann. You have to protect now the pawn on d5, c3, bishop to c5, attacking now the pawn on f2, and here knight to d2 played by Magnus Carlsen. So okay, Magnus is now challenging the knight in the center of the board. What to do here? Hans Niemann simply castled. He could have also taken the knight, but he's still waiting with this knight in the center of the board, and now Magnus Carlsen has also, I think, to make a decision here. He can take of course with knight takes e4, d takes e4, still okay, you can play knight to g5, you can trade off the queens on the d file, but probably what Magnus Carlsen would not have liked in this scenario is that the queens are off the board, then the game is not so complicated anymore. The game is too simplified for my taste, and probably of course for Magnus Carlsen's taste. So that's why here Magnus didn't want to play the game like this. He challenged further this knight on e4 with the move bishop to c2, and now the fun already starts. Here Hans Niemann plays knight takes f2, and many times I would not recommend you to play this kind of a tactic where you're giving up maybe two minor pieces for the rook and the pawn. Usually, as I said, I would not recommend it for you to do, but in this open Ruy Lopez, I think it's perfectly fine. There are many things that have to be said about this position further. First of all, notice that the f file is open, so the king will be decoyed where already the black rook is, so the white king will be decoyed to the f file, so that's why it could be endangered. Also, one other important thing that we have to notice in white's position is the lack of development. So you see the knight on d2 is standing in the way of the bishop on c1, so you still have to play 1, 2, 3, 4, even maybe tempi in order to get your pieces into shape, in order to get your pieces somehow into the game. So that's why I think this sacrifice on f2 is perfectly fine. You're giving up two pieces, but then you're activating these other pieces, so white has now really a tough time in order to defend his position. So we have rook takes takes f2, bishop to f2, king to f2, and you see now with the move f6, Hans Niemann is trying now to open the f-file. So as I said, this is not a mistake. Usually it would be a mistake, but this is one of the main lines of the beautiful open rule Lopez. It's called the so-called St. Petersburg variation. So after move f6, we have now king to g1. Magnus escapes now from the potential f-file attack. There is also a line, it is playable if you play, for instance, e takes f6, but probably after queen to f6, notice again this lack of development. You have to first secure the king, you have to then play somewhere with your knight, you have to somehow include the rook into the game. It's simply too slow. Let's see a possible continuation play. King to g1, now black activates, for instance, the rook on e8, and now you have to liberate somehow your bishop, you have to get it out, you have to activate your pieces, and now there is this move that I think would be very complicated for white to handle. Knight to e5. If you take, of course, knight takes e5, then you get checkmated. That's the problem about this attack on the f-file. Look at this, queen to f1, and then of course rook to f1 leads into a checkmate sequence. So you have to wait here. Maybe you can play something else. You can play, I don't know, maybe bishop to e3, somehow trying to activate further pieces. Then you see knight to f3, g takes f3, your king is a little bit exposed, the rook is targeting here the bishop on e3. Still probably nothing is lost here for white, but I still would not love to play the game like this. So that's why after move f6 we have seen e takes f6 is not so good. So that's why Magnus escapes now from this potential f-file attack. But now of course Hans Niemann has the opportunity to take another pawn. So Hans Niemann gained now the rook and 2 pawns for the loss of the 2 minor pieces. So he has still the central control with both of these pawns. The engine, for instance, gives here equal chances. So who is now the better player will probably win the game, because the game is quite complicated. So in the continuation we have now knight to f1. Magnus finally liberates now these pieces. He's getting into the game. We have queen to d6 by Hans Niemann, and now bishop to g5. Also there are basically 2 opportunities: bishop to e3 if you want to stop maybe a d4 breakthrough, or bishop to g5 like Magnus Carlsen did. You can then reroute the bishop on h4 if necessary, also to g3, targeting then the queen on d6 if something gets cleared. If maybe this long diagonal against the queen opens, then you have possibilities to attack the position further. So in the continuation, after move queen to d6, as I said, Magnus played this line, bishop to g5. The bishop is finally out, and now e4 by Hans Niemann, knight to d4, and of course knight to e5 by Hans Niemann, because if you trade off here the knights on d4, then c takes d4 is blocking out the position in the center. Now I think knight to e3, bishop to h4, bishop to g3 by Magnus would have been the continuation, probably bishop to b3, targeting then also the pawn on d5, maybe then rook to c1, rook to c5. Really nice blockade, nice grip on dark squares white would play for sure. So as I said, this is not the way to go here. Hans Niemann is saying, I already gave up 2 minor pieces. At least he tried now to complicate things by staying at least with the knight on the board. So in the continuation we have a knight to e3. Really beautiful sort of a Nimzovich blockade here by Magnus Carlsen. The knight is really compact here in the center. It controls also really the center of the board, but it's also blocking out the potential progress of black's pawn. So really nice positional move here by the world champion Magnus. So after move knight to e3, bishop to d7 was played by Hans Niemann. c5 is not an option here. You would love to play the move c5. I think this is a brilliant idea to get the central pawns from, but it's not working. As we said, knight to e6, queen to e6, and then queen to d5. If you look at this, knight takes d5, it looks also probably this pawn. So it's then a complicated game for black for sure. So after move knight to e3, that's why Hans Niemann retreated, bishop to d7, and now bishop to h4. Finally Magnus Carlsen tries his idea, bishop to g3, and he's trying now to reroute the bishop here and targeting the knight on e5. And now comes the critical moment of the game. Here Hans Niemann has the choice to play maybe queen to h6, attacking the knight on e3, or he could have played maybe the move c5. And actually c5 he should have played, and that's why I think this is remarkable and quite an instructive game. c5 it's sort of a must move here for black, because look at this. You can play, of course, here the move bishop to g3, continuing the pressure. Actually, white has to leave now this knight unprotected. Here on d4 we have c takes d4. The problem for white is here that you cannot take with the pawn c takes d4, because black gets out of this tactical mess and plays now queen to h6 and is targeting then the knight on e3. Here in this scenario, this wasn't played in the game, but it's really interesting what's going on in the center of the board. Actually, white has to take out now with the queen, and now the continuation would be something like this. So you get the rook into the game, but now look at this, bishop to e4. You have to play bishop to c6. Of course, d takes e4 is not working. The queen is hanging, and now you take out another pawn. Look at this, you get out of this mess, but at least maybe this comes out with the situation where black is up the exchange, but white is here maybe a 3 versus 2 situation, will probably end maybe with a minor piece against the rook or something. It's really complicated to play, but as I said, c5 was the must move that Hans Niemann had to play. Unfortunately for him, after move bishop to d7 and bishop to h4, here Hans played queen to h6, and actually he got tricked here by Magnus Carlsen. Pause the video now, try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's quite a stunning tactic that Magnus saw in this fast time format. Really immortal tactical shot. So as I said, pause the video and try to see now the best continuation. Okay, Magnus played the correct move, knight from d to f5. Notice now that this is a move that comes with a great attack, and here you have to take, of course. The problem is that your pawn on d5 is hanging. In the continuation, we have now this one, bishop to f5. We have knight to f5, and the problem is now after rook to f5, look at this, you get this one, queen to d5, and now you have to maybe cover, but now at least white can take out the rook, and white is continuing down now with the completely winning position where white is up a whole piece. So after move maybe here knight to f5, you could also maybe try, I don't know, to get out of this mess by playing the move queen to g6, but notice now knight to e7 is going to happen. You cannot also play queen to e6. You cannot actually protect the pawn on d5, because again, queen to d5, knight to e7, and then we take out the pawn, and then also this pawn on e4 is hanging. The same thing happens if you try here to play queen to c6. Again, you get some wild forks with this knight. So brilliant tactical shot by Magnus Carlsen. So that's why after move knight to f5, you don't have time to take out the knight, you don't have time to escape with the queen. So here Hans Niemann tried a different attack. He played out the move knight to f3. Here Magnus plays again the correct move, queen takes f3, staying now very compact. If you want to take it now, then we simply continue here with queen to f5, and this is game over. So you don't have time also to take out the queen. If you take e takes f3, then we simply take out also the queen on h6, and white is continuing with 2 minor pieces with the beautiful bishop pair against the rook. Again, they should be winning. So after move queen to f3, actually what the only way maybe to somehow battle for draw, obviously white is much better. White should be winning in any of these lines, but the only way maybe to prolong somehow the game for Hans Niemann was this line, queen to h4, knight to h4, maybe now e takes f3, and after knight to f3, okay, black has a situation where black has a rook and a pawn for 2 minor pieces, has here maybe a 4 versus 3 situation, but still I think this is a perfect game for white. But at least white is not continuing with the bishop pair. That's now I think the most important thing. But after move queen to f3 that Magnus played, here Hans Niemann played the worst move, queen to b6, and now Magnus has this one, queen to e3. We have rook to f5. Now Magnus takes, we have queen to b6, c takes b6, but again we have this scenario where black lost too much material. White is still the beautiful bishop pair on the board and has now completely winning again. I mean, the continuation continuation, of course, bishop to f2 by Magnus. He's stopping the progress of these pawns. He's attacking also the weak pawn on b6. Rook to b8, rook to d1, attacking the pawn, bishop to b3, and now after king to e6, a beautiful move by Magnus Carlsen, rook to d4. The threat is now rook to e4. You cannot take because of the activity of the light square bishop. You cannot also play here because you get bishop to g3. You cannot also play, of course, king to d6. Again, bishop to g3 is simply too much to handle. You lose the rook with an x-ray attack. So in the continuation, after rook to d4, here Hans Niemann steps back from the defense of the pawn. We have a rook takes d5, a rook takes d5, bishop to d5, b4 by Hans Niemann, but Magnus simply takes this pawn. We have a rook to c8. Here Hans is trying to somehow get the rook into the game, but Magnus simply takes. Nothing wrong with this move. Here a check by Hans, not a problem. Here still Magnus Carlsen escapes with the king. No more checks are possible by Black's rook. We have a rook takes b2, and here after bishop to e4, king to e6, bishop to a5, in this position Hans Niemann resigns. So there's not a good way anymore to protect. Everything will take out this one. We'll simply continue with 2 versus 1 here. We can also go for this pawn. Black will never be able to protect this pawn on a6. So in this position, as I said, Hans Niemann resigns. So brilliant game by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. As I said, here he played without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders. His centi-pawn, average centi-pawn loss was 11, almost like the Stockfish 15 engine. I'm not sure if Stockfish could play any different move like Magnus Carlsen. Really immortal game. And notice, as I said in the beginning, this was the rapid time format game in which they had only 15 minutes a clock, and I'm not sure how much they had the increment time, but as I said, this was quite a spectacular game by Magnus Carlsen. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the open Ruy Lopez for sure. If you want to see some other commented chess games, check out also our analysis of some other beautiful games from some other tournaments. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.